Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me here in Old World Blues. So we have got a couple of kind of bizarre humanoid things that exist in this place, which shouldn't come as a huge surprise considering that the topic of last week's video, when we talked about the ghost people at the Sierra Madre and what happened there, was originated here in Big Mountain. So we're here at the Y17 medical facility, which is the kind of southeast of the crater. So sinks right there in the middle kind of thing. And I've just blown this guy in because it's Mr. Orderly's that's in here normally. So just blown this guy in to talk about the Y17 Trauma Override Harness. So they're pretty creepy to look at because you've got a living, breathing skeleton in a spacesuit essentially. So it's another kind of suit that turned what should have been a really good idea into a horrific nightmare in practice. So the Y17 Trauma Override Harness was a suit that was designed to automatically retrieve injured soldiers and return them to home base by taking over their motor functions. And there's some useful terminal entries that kind of explain that a little bit better, but they use artificial muscle fibres and artificial sort of fibres to control the movement of the wearer, instead of using like hydraulics or something like that. But the suit can learn new behaviours by recording sort of movements and neuromuscular patterns and pathways, which can that actually include them learning how to shoot and how to fight, which is an interesting one. And the suit also tracks the vital signs of the user, and then when they reach a certain injury threshold, the idea would be that they would take over the soldier's body, march them back to base so that they could be treated. So that all sounds great. So if we head up to the second floor in here, and say this is where you come if you're doing all my friends have off switches, and you've got the upgrades for the autodock, and then the sync personality for the autodock is over here next to this typewriter. So that's where you would find that. I say I've gone back to quite an early save in my Old World Blues playthrough for this one, but over here in the corner we do have a functioning terminal. And then so the Sierra Madre, if you wanted proof that that was the case, we've got a note about it here. One of the execs mentioned that whether Sinclair knew it or not, the Sierra Madre would be a test case for the autodock and the innovative toxins research. Maybe they were joking, but even that kind of joke sends a chill down my spine. If I got poisoned by one of those toxins, no way would I crawl inside one of the Y17 autodocks here if my life depended on it. The medical tech for those trauma suits alone makes me wish they'd raise their research. The suits do more thinking than the people inside them, so we've got someone that's kind of raising concerns about this and about the situation at the Sierra Madre. And then we've got the testing results for the Y17 Trauma Harness. So it succeeded beyond our wildest expectations. The test harnesses were able to take over the motor functions of an injured subject and walk them back to home base. We'll have to see what develops once it's recorded enough neuro-automuscular movements to display a wider range of behaviours. To think if they could be programmed to replicate a wearer's shooting or fighting reflexes, we'd have something truly amazing for the war effort. So they've seen this happen, that this suit is learning potentially behaviours and potentially we're just going to let the injured soldiers fight automatically and things. So they're thinking, yeah, this is great, fantastic, big success. And then we've got some action items. So there was clearly some problems with the development of these suits. I mentioned here, still remain to be ironed out before the Y17 Trauma Harness is ready for general production. Calibrating the proper amount of injury to trigger the suit remains problematic. So they are having trouble pinpointing the point where the suit should then take over. Because you don't want to, if somebody gets a paper cut, you don't need the suit taken over. But if somebody's lost their head, then again, but we will get to that part. So still, the little Yankee subjects could hardly protest once inside the harness. If a home base is not designated, the suit enters an unpredictable wander state, and as we discovered while calibrating injury levels, The suit's sensors are unable to recognise when the wearer is dead. Luckily, autonomous corpse retrieval is nearly as useful as autonomous casualty recovery, so it's a feature, not a bug. Seems to be the line there. So yeah, the suit is unable to tell when the wearer is dead, but they think, well, that's great because then it brings the body back to base, so that's a good thing. Yeah, that would be quite convenient, I'm sure. But also that if there's no home base designated for the suit, then the suit just wanders and becomes unpredictable, and that's the problem with technology, is if it doesn't have specific instructions, then it can become unpredictable, and then it's like, okay, well, what's going to happen here? And then the suits did start learning like combat behaviour and stuff like that, and when there was no home base designated, the suit became impossible to control and aggressive, and that's what happened. So then the bombs fell, and everything kind of went a bit nuts. So the first place it actually happened was in X8, and then it happened elsewhere in the crater, and that, 200 years later, they're still here, so you can encounter these guys out in the wild, and they're not an easy challenge to fight. So they just roam with the skeletons, and if you hear them moving, even the subtitles say you hear the bones rattling, so we can take a good look at this guy. We've got no muscle left, no tissue left, all that's left is bones, so this person has been stuck in this suit for 200 years, dead, and eventually rotted away to just the skeleton, but the suit can still make them move because it's got artificial muscle. It's kind of weird that, there's nothing on the hands, but yet they can operate guns, so you can see there's got looks like a plasma rifle or some sort. So they do tend to use kind of high-end energy weapons, and they just roam around and attack anything that moves, usually you, which is always fun. But if you visit Y17 here and you install the personality in the autodoc, and the end screen of Old World Blues, it will state that the autodoc eventually did figure out how to disable these suits and release the people that have been dead for 200 years and now can then be allowed to rest as they should, which is nice. So that's one interesting little thing there. They are very tough, so let's see if I've just got the so yeah, they've got quite a high damage threshold of 20, and they do use high-end energy weapons, and their armor is equivalent to like the Mark II combat armor, so not the easiest thing to take down. Not fun when you do come across them. Interestingly, for combat, see, it's also looking at me. How is it looking at me with no eyes? That's really creepy. But we don't really know how they managed to operate the gun because there's nothing covering the suit. I don't know if that was just an oversight, that maybe there should have been gloves on it or something, I don't know. But that's the case anyway, and we've got these creepy skeletons and spacesuits wandering the crater and attacking people. But for combat purposes, they're actually coded as female, which means that if you have Lady Killer as a male character or Cherchez la Femme as a female character, then you do bonus damage to them. But they're not robots or anything, so like EMP stuff doesn't make any difference to them. And then you can encounter the master one, which is hang on, let me double. So you can encounter the master one at X12, so we'll head over there. We're gonna make, yay, we made it. There we go. It's one thing Old World Blues seems to be more than any other part of this game is still prone to crashing on loading screens quite a lot. So here we are in X12 Research Centre, where they had a bit of an issue with one of the trauma harnesses. So they had an issue with one that they were testing out here. The research team choked on a buffalo gourd seed and died while working late last night, and they can't get the trauma harness to shut down. So this was the other problem, was that if the wearer died, they couldn't shut the thing down, and it was attacking other employees. So they were like, send help, we need something to try and stop this. Basically this dead Mr. Harris from attacking all his colleagues. It was obviously quite concerning, so they sent request and they got sent a copy of the K9000 Cyberdog gun, which is the big machine gun that's got the dog brain in it. And it's like, yeah, it should do the trick, let me know if you've got any questions. And then it's been sealed in X12, so unfortunately the person who had the gun fell and dropped it and had to flee, and that means that the trauma harness here has acquired the said Cyberdog gun. So if you want another copy of it, because there is a recipe that you can completely change it and you make it into the FIDO one. So if you want to have one of each one with all the upgrades and then the FIDO one, then you need the second copy, and this is where you get it. So we can see him down there. So this is presumably Mr. Harris's skeleton that we're dealing with down here. So this is a master. So like all the enemies in Old World Blues, there's a unique variant in the location. So this one's even tougher than the other guys, and he does have the Cyberdog. I can't pick up him because he's not a person. But yeah, so this is the master override harness right here. Very interested in this flooring for some reason. Combat AI is turned off, right enough. But yeah, so this is the other place to get the Cyberdog gun as well, and this is the kind of situation that they discovered it, is if the occupant of the suit dies, they lose control of the suit completely, and that's obviously a big problem because they can't get the person out of it, they can't do anything with it if they can't get the suit to shut down. So for all these kind of reasons, this is why these suits never kind of got into, you know, production and were actually used in combat or on the front lines or anything like that. And it seems that, you know, they were trying to reverse engineer the stealth suits here as well, which also didn't really work the way it was supposed to. That was kind of the thing with Big Mountain, is that there was a lot of wacky experiments that were done that didn't really work as intended, and that's why it ended up being it was the power armor suits that did eventually win the day in Anchorage, until bombs fell. So very, very interesting one. And there's one other little kind of thing that can happen with this guy, particularly the master trauma override harness. And if you have Wild Wasteland on, this character doesn't, although I do tend to like playing with Wild Wasteland on personally, then he will say who turned out the lights, which is a reference to some Doctor Who episodes where a man in a sort of environment suit of some kind gets infected with some microorganism that takes control of his body and attacks people. So kind of a similar idea, although the way it's done is different, because in this case it's the suit itself that's causing it. It's a fun little reference. I say it's a bit of a weird inconsistency just with the hands, because how can the suit control the fingers when there's no muscle there? I mean, there's not really any muscle in your hands, it's all tendons. The muscles are in your forearm and your upper arm that control your fingers. That's just the way it works anatomically, but you still need the tendons and the ligaments of the hand for the fingers to be able to move. But, you know, the sleeves of the suit stop just below the elbow, so it shouldn't be able to make the hands move, but it does. So you know, it's a little bit of an inconsistency. I think that's the only thing that would make it make more sense, as if there was gloves, and then you could see how the suit could then take over the movement of the hands, because mechanically speaking the human hand is very complex. Actually, it's very difficult to replicate. I mean, it's even the same, you know, just drawing the form of it, especially because our hands can do so many different things. You know, if you talk to any artist that draws people, most of them will say that hands are the most difficult thing for artists to draw, because you know, the different things, the different positions that the hands can be in, the way we can hold stuff and manipulate things is so different to anything, you know, in the animal world. So animals that do have opposable thumbs, like primates and raccoons, actually, are quite good at holding things, but most other animals don't have that ability to manipulate with their forelimbs, with their front paws, essentially. Cats do to a little degree. They can use what's called dew claws, which are the kind of equivalent of the thumbs. They do use them for climbing and things like that, whereas dogs don't really use them. But the human hand is very complicated in the things that it's capable of. I mean, another example is something that people who don't really know how to crochet don't believe me, but you know, there's a reason that, you know, knitting machines exist, because you can replicate knitting stitches by machine. But when it comes to crocheting, which is where you're using a hook and yarn to create things, that can't be replicated. There's not a machine in existence that can actually replicate all the crochet stitches that exist. It's just not possible to make, or if it is possible, it would be so cost prohibitive that nobody would want to do it anyway, because it would just be quicker and cheaper to do it by hand. And it's because of the capabilities of our hands, you know, and that's something that I do as a hobby. I mean, if you've been here for a while, you probably know that I'm writing books and things, and obviously play a lot of games as well. I have too many hobbies. And crocheting is one. I mean, it is also listed in the profile. I do have a crochet YouTube channel, but I had to kind of stop doing it because of the pain in my hands from my arthritis condition. So I haven't really crocheted much for quite a long time, but it is something that I enjoy doing. I designed little Highland cows and even made a Brahmin using that pattern by adding an extra head. In fact, what I'll do, I'll see if I can fish out the pictures, and I'll stick them up in the community tab if you want to have a look at my crochet Brahmin and things. So it's something that I find quite therapeutic, but it's not something that a machine has been able to replicate, and essentially to be able to do it, you would have to make the machine that basically does the exact same thing that human hands can do, and that's something that is quite difficult to do. You know, I mean, we do have some pretty good technology now, which is why we've got really good, you know, prosthetic arms and hands for people that have lost, you know, they've had to have hands amputated and things like that, that can be a lot more functional for them, which is a really, really good thing, you know, but it's not an easy thing to replicate, so I guess we've just kind of decided to go with because this is just how it works in this situation. But you know, that's the only kind of thing that I think is a bit weird, and I think it's just maybe been a wee bit of an oversight in terms of the design of these guys, but I do like them as an enemy. You know, when you're wandering about the crater and you see one of these in the distance, you know that you're in for a bit of a battle, because they're not easy to take down, but they're nice and creepy. You know, you've got these long dead people roaming and attacking people. They're very, very creepy. You can hear their bones rattling when they move, and I think they make a good addition. And again, you know, it really ties into the theme of Old World Blues, which is about the, you know, mad science, and how maybe we need to temper the need for experimentation and innovation, and maybe think about what we're doing. You know, maybe there's some things that we just don't need to do, and some things that we just don't need to know, and just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something, you know, and that kind of thing. And I mean, the other part of it is that you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, which is defined as, you know, madness, really. That if you keep doing the exact same thing again and again and expecting different results, you're never going to get there. You have to change something, and I think that's going to be an interesting one for next week. So we're going to talk about the lobotomites next week, because they are obviously part of this DLC, and while they're not necessarily mutated, they have been changed quite drastically due to actions here at Big Mountain, and they say this is probably poor Mr. Harris, who choked on his lunch and died and then got locked in here with the cyberdog gun because he was attacking all his colleagues and things. So it's you know, yeah, it's, you should come along here and put him out of his misery. I think that's that would be a kind thing to do for the poor guy. So yeah, that's your Y17 Trauma Override Harnesses. I think they're a very interesting enemy. I mean, the enemy design and everything in this DLC is great. Old World Blues is by far my favourite of all the DLCs in the games. Yeah, I just love it. Everything about it. It's wacky, it's creepy, it's highly entertaining. Yeah, it's my favourite. So hopefully you enjoyed that. As always, I do love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, let me know what your favourite enemy in Old World Blues is, or your favourite part of Old World Blues. I'd love to hear it, because I say it's my favourite DLC. It's just the writing and the dialogue is just hilarious. Yeah, everything about it is just absolutely fantastic, except for its tendency to crash when you fast travel. That gets a wee bit irritating, but you know what, that's I'm willing to forgive that. That's fair enough. It's New Vegas. You know, I played it at launch, so it's come a long way since then. It's a buggy little game, but I still love it. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.